I am 75 years old, and for a while I thought I would never be able to get up without help again. I'm not talking about something dramatic or a spectacular fall. I'm talking about how slowly it all started, and how quickly it got worse. At first it was just a discomfort. It became harder to climb stairs. It took me a little longer to get up from the sofa. I thought it was normal, part of aging. But over the months, I noticed that my legs were no longer the same. They started to tremble when I stood. I stopped bending down. I stopped walking long distances. And worse, I began to avoid moving. Out of fear, out of insecurity. One day, I stayed sitting in a dining chair for over an hour without getting up. Not out of laziness, but because I didn't trust my legs. That was the first time I felt something close to fear of depending on others. Not fear of dying, no. Fear of losing the dignity of doing things by myself. But I don't want this story to be just about fear. I want to tell you that this was not the end. Because something changed. Something small, simple, but powerful. I discovered a combination that transformed my body and with it, my life. HMB and proteins. No. It's not a magic pill, nor is it something new, but it's something very few older adults know about, and it can make a real difference, just as it did for me. If you've ever felt weak, if you're afraid of stumbling, if every day you feel further away from the body you used to have, stay with me. This story is not about muscles, it's about freedom, about how to regain that confidence to move without fear, to stand firm, and about how it's not too late to do so. Before continuing, let me ask you something. How old are you? And where are you listening from? I'll read your answers in the comments. The beginning of physical decline. There wasn't a single day when everything changed. It was so slow, so silent, that by the time I realized it, it had been happening for months. The first thing I noticed was a slight discomfort climbing stairs. A feeling in my legs, as if they took a second longer to react, as if they carried a little more weight. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was the humidity. Maybe I had slept badly. It was one of those passing discomforts. But it wasn't. Over time, climbing stairs stopped being uncomfortable and became a task, something I had to plan. Before, I climbed them without thinking. Now, every step was an effort. I held onto the handrail, paused halfway, took a deep breath. It was hard to admit, but I started avoiding them. If I forgot something on the second floor, I preferred to leave it for later, or never. The same started to happen with chairs, not all of them, only the lower ones. But one by one, they became traps. I would sit and then take a few seconds before trying to get up. Sometimes, I even rested a hand on my knee, pushed hard, and still felt it was difficult, as if my legs were no longer mine, as if they didn't remember how to help me. There was a day I will never forget. I was alone at home. I sat in a low armchair to change my shoes. I had done it thousands of times, but that day, when I tried to stand, I couldn't. I tried once, then again. I stayed there, looking at the floor, feeling ridiculous. I felt something that hurt more than my body. Shame. No one was watching me, but I still felt exposed, defeated. The hardest part of all this wasn't the pain. It was the frustration. That feeling of being trapped in a body that no longer responds as before. You remain the same inside. Your ideas, memories, will. But the body begins to make decisions without consulting you. And you realize you are losing things without anyone taking them away. You're leaving them behind because you can no longer hold on to them. I started living with fear. Fear of falling, fear of stumbling, fear of not being able to get up. And with that fear, I began moving less. Not out of laziness, not out of disinterest, but out of a kind of silent resignation. As if little by little, I was convincing myself that this was now my life. More sitting, more still, smaller. But the worst part is that no one notices at first. From the outside, you're still you, You walk, talk, do your things, but inside, you know something is fading, and you don't know how to turn it back on. The emotional impact of losing strength. Losing strength in your legs is one thing. What it starts to do inside you is something very different. I have always been an independent person. I didn't like asking for favors, not even from my family. I was proud of being able to do my things, cook, take a walk around the neighborhood, go to the doctor alone. But when my legs started to fail, that pride became a burden, one heavier than my body. Because it wasn't just that it was hard to climb stairs or get up from a chair, it was how I felt knowing that maybe, soon, I would have to ask for help. And not out of courtesy, but because I would have no other choice. I began fearing things I never thought about before. What if I fell in the shower? What if I couldn't reach the phone? What if no one heard me? I found myself mentally planning possible accidents. I walked closer to the walls. I didn't want to go out alone. I stopped going to some stores just because they had steps at the entrance. The mind fills with small fears, invisible to others, but constant. They become part of your daily life, like a background buzz that never stops. You don't tell anyone because you don't want to worry them, but you know it's there. And over time, those fears change you. The worst wasn't the fear of falling. It was the fear of depending, of having to wait for someone to come help me, of becoming a burden to my children, to my grandchildren. I saw others in my situation and thought, is that how I'll look soon? I felt life shrinking. Like before, I lived in a house with many doors, and now I could only stay in one room. One particular morning, I woke up with hip pain, and it was hard to turn in bed. I sat on the edge, looked at my legs, and a sharp, direct thought came to me. Now I really feel old. Not because of grey hair, not because of wrinkles, not because of the age on my ID card, but because of that new, almost cruel certainty that I could no longer trust my body. That feeling that I was beginning to lose what I had always taken for granted, the freedom to move, to take care of myself, to decide for myself. And the hardest part is, no one prepares you for this. TV talks about aging as something natural, even romantic. But it doesn't tell you about the sadness you feel the first time you stare at a staircase knowing you can't climb it anymore. That, for me, was truly aging. And I didn't like it at all. The search for solutions and the unexpected advice. When you start losing strength, the first thing you try to do is regain control. I didn't want to give up, so I began looking for solutions. I visited my primary care doctor, got routine checkups, talked to the physiotherapist at the health center. They all told me more or less the same. It's normal, Antonio. At your age, the body changes. Do some exercise, stay active, don't stay still. And yes, it made sense. They gave me a simple routine to do at home. Getting up from the chair several times, walking down the hallway, stretches. I tried it. I did it every day. I felt good for keeping it up, but I didn't notice real changes. Weeks passed, and I stayed the same. The tiredness didn't go away. Climbing one step was still a battle. Some days I even thought I was wearing out faster, that instead of strengthening, I was weakening more quickly. I thought about quitting, about accepting that the body wouldn't respond as before. I began reorganizing the house, leaving the most important things on the ground floor, just in case. I was making space, silently, for dependence. Until one day, unexpectedly, a conversation came. My grandson Thomas came to visit. He is a little over 30, works in health, and often reads about nutrition and aging. He saw me a bit down, and I told him what was happening. He listened quietly. Then, without hesitation, he said, "Grandpa, have you ever heard of HMB?" I looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "What?" "HMB," he repeated. "It's a compound that helps maintain muscle mass in older adults. It's widely used in rehabilitation. They combine it with proteins." At that moment, I won't lie, it seemed like just another trend. Another strange powder. Another promise that sounds good, but ends up being a useless expense. That's what I told him. Another magic powder? I've already taken collagen, fruit shakes, garlic capsules, and here I am. But he insisted. He explained it wasn't something new but had studies behind it, especially in older people. It wasn't to make me muscular, but to avoid losing the little I had left. It made me think. That night I searched for information. I didn't understand all the scientific terms, but one thing stuck. HMB can help slow muscle loss in inactive older adults. That phrase hit me. Because even though I did my exercises, deep down I knew my body was becoming more inactive. I moved less, yes. I demanded less from myself, and that was taking its toll. The next day, I decided to try. Not with blind faith, not with enthusiasm, but with that mix of hope and skepticism we have when we've lived enough not to believe in promises, but not enough to stop looking for solutions. What is HMB and why should you care? When I first heard the word HMB, I thought it was another one of those strange acronyms on trendy products. But after some research, I realized it wasn't a recent invention or a passing fad. It was something that made sense, much more than I expected. The full name sounds complicated. Beta-hydroxy-beta-methylbutyrate. But you don't need to memorize it. Just know that HMB is a substance your own body produces in small amounts when you eat certain protein-rich foods. In particular, it comes from an amino acid called leucine, found in meat, eggs, dairy, and some legumes. Leucine is very important for building muscle, but the body doesn't convert it all directly into muscle. Part of it transforms into HMB, and that's where it gets interesting. Researchers discovered that HMB helps protect muscle, not just build it, but prevent it from breaking down. In other words, as we age and our muscles weaken from disuse or age itself, HMB can act as a shield against that silent loss no one notices until it's obvious. And the most surprising thing for me was learning its effect is even more noticeable in older people like me. In studies with sedentary older adults, meaning people who don't move much, HMB reduced muscle loss and even helped recover some strength, especially when combined with an adequate daily amount of proteins. Think about this for a moment. It's not a foreign substance or a strange chemical. It's something the body already produces, but in small doses. And with age, that production drops even more. By taking it as a supplement, you're not tricking your body. You're just helping it do better what it was already trying to do. This made sense to me. It didn't promise to turn me into an athlete or make me 20 years younger, but it offered a real possibility. Stop the decline. Hold on to what you have. And if you were lucky, even recover some lost ground. At that moment I thought, if there's a natural, proven and simple way to help my legs support me a bit longer, why not try it? I didn't expect miracles. I just wanted one more chance to walk firmly, to get up without fear. And that, at least for me, was reason enough to try. How I combined HMB with proteins and why it worked. Once I understood what HMB was, I knew it wasn't enough to just know it. I had to put it into practice. So I sat down with paper and pencil, like in the old days, and made a small plan. Nothing complicated. I didn't want to change my whole life, just do something sustainable. The first step was choosing a supplement. There are many options at pharmacies and specialty stores. Some come alone, others combined with proteins. I chose a powder, flavorless, easy to mix with water or shakes. I won't name the brand because every body is different, and I don't want anyone to take it as medical advice. But the important thing was that it had the daily dose that studies considered effective, about 3 grams of HMB per day. Then I thought about proteins. I was never one to eat large amounts of meat, but I knew I needed them. So I talked to a nutritionist, and she helped me adjust my meals. No strict diet, just small changes. Adding eggs to breakfast, some Greek yogurt in the afternoon, tuna, lentils, or chicken breast at the main meal. Simple things I already ate, but with more intention. My routine looked like this. In the morning, after breakfast, I took the first portion of HMB. I mixed it with water and drank it without issue. After walking or doing some light exercise, I took a bit more, along with a protein-rich snack. Sometimes a milk and oatmeal shake, or just a couple of cooked egg whites. At night, not always, But when I felt more active during the day, I took a last small dose. It wasn't about measuring grams all day. It was more a care routine, like watering your plants in the morning and afternoon. I made sure my body had what it needed not to keep losing strength, and over time I began to notice it. At first it was subtle. One day I got up from a chair without thinking. Another day I climbed the stairs without stopping halfway. Nothing spectacular, but those small achievements for me were huge victories. It was as if my body was thanking me for the effort. I don't want it to sound like the supplement did it all. No, it was the combination. HMB, proteins, and above all, movement. The commitment to give myself another chance. And the most valuable thing, seeing that change was still possible, even at 75. First changes in body and mood. The changes didn't happen overnight. There wasn't a morning I woke up with new legs or the strength I had at 40. But as weeks passed, something started happening. Something real. First, it was energy. I got up feeling lighter. Before, the first hour of the day was like dragging a bag of stones. I felt slow, dull. But I began to notice I moved more easily, that I felt less reluctant to walk from one room to another, that I didn't need as much momentum to get off the sofa. Then something more obvious came. Stability. I didn't realize it until I stopped doing it, but I no longer held onto walls while walking down the hallway. I no longer tested the floor before putting my foot down. I felt firmer, more secure, as if my legs had remembered they were capable of supporting me. There was a moment I won't forget. It was an ordinary afternoon. I was going to my room and remembered I left my glasses upstairs. I hesitated. For months, every time I thought about climbing stairs, that feeling of effort and discomfort overwhelmed me. But that time, no. I didn't think much. I approached, put my foot on the first step, and kept going, one by one, without stopping, without looking back. At the top, I paused a second, not because I was tired, but because I realized what I had just done. I had climbed the stairs without stopping. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. I felt capable again, as if I had recovered a part of myself I thought was lost. That small achievement returned my desire to move. I started going out for walks more often, to circle the block, to go get the bread instead of asking someone to bring it. It wasn't out of obligation anymore, but because I wanted to. Because stopping moving, now I saw clearly, was like silently accepting that you're fading away. And I still wanted to shine a little longer. I also felt the fear retreating, that invisible fear of stumbling, falling, not being able to get up, began losing strength. I felt it less present, as if the body, by responding, also put a brake on the fear. As if it said, "Relax, I'm still here with you." And that is priceless. How strength affects your daily independence. Over time, I understood something no one had clearly explained. Everything in old age begins, and often ends, with the legs. They don't say it out loud, but it's true. Independence, that word we who have lived value so much, doesn't start in the head or hands. It starts with the strength you have to stand. If you can't get up on your own, if it's hard to walk safely, everything becomes more limited. Something as simple as going to the bathroom in the middle of the night becomes risky. Cooking a quick meal is no longer an everyday task, but a physical challenge. Getting dressed in the morning, putting on socks, bending down to pick something up, all become small battles. Strength is not a luxury. It's the foundation of your freedom. You don't have to run or lift weights, but you do need the minimum to move by yourself. And after 60, it doesn't maintain itself. You lose it fast if you don't care for it, faster than you'd imagine. I recently read a study that caught my attention. It said that leg strength, especially the ability to get up from a chair without using your arms, directly relates to life expectancy in older adults. Yes, just as it sounds. It's not a myth, it's science. People who can get up alone without support live longer and with better quality of life. Do you know one of the simplest tests geriatric specialists use? It's called the chair test. You sit with your arms crossed over your chest and try to stand up without momentum or support. Those who can't are at higher risk of losing independence in the coming years. It's a simple but powerful test, because it reveals how your muscles, balance, and coordination are doing. When I did it for the first time before taking HMB and improving my diet, it was very hard. I needed help. I felt clumsy, heavy, as if I no longer controlled my own legs. But months later, I tried again. I sat down, breathed, and got up without touching anything. With effort, yes. But I did it. That day I didn't celebrate. I didn't shout or call anyone. I just stood silently, looking forward, and understood something profound. Staying standing is more than a physical act. It's a declaration of will. It's telling life you still have something to do here, because every time you get up without help, you gain more than mobility. You gain time, dignity, and freedom. Simple exercises. I combined with the supplement. HMB and proteins alone don't work miracles. They are like fuel, but for the engine to run, you have to start it. I understood that very early. If I wanted to strengthen my legs, I had to use them, even a little, even slowly. I'm not talking about going to the gym or running in the park. None of that. I mean small movements. Simple exercises anyone can do at home, without equipment, without trainers. Just with willpower. One of the first I added was assisted squats. I stood in front of a chair, hands lightly on the backrest, and lowered myself slowly as if to sit, but without touching the seat. Then I rose again. At first, only 3 reps. My legs trembled. I felt I couldn't do it. But over days, I managed 5, then 8, then 10. Another exercise that helped a lot was stepping up one stair repeatedly. I put one foot up, climbed, came down, switched legs. I only needed the front steps. I held the railing. At first I got tired in a few minutes, but it was enough. The important thing wasn't how much I did, but that I did it every day. I also started walking around the house on purpose. I went from one room to another every so often, sometimes without need, just to move. Then I started going out to the porch, taking a lap around the block, feeling the air on my face, seeing people, even if I didn't talk to anyone. A typical routine looked like this. Upon waking, 5 squats in front of the chair. Before lunch, 10 stair climbs, alternating legs. In the afternoon, a 10-minute walk around the neighborhood. At night, gentle stretches while listening to the radio. I didn't always do it perfectly. Some days I didn't feel like it. Others, my body didn't respond. But I tried not to let more than one day pass without moving, even a little. Because I understood something that changed how I see aging. Every time you stay still too long, you lose a bit more. But every time you move, even a little, you regain something. And step by step, I recovered not only strength, but confidence. Every squat was a way of saying, I still can. Every walk was a victory over fear. And every time I felt more stable, firmer, freer, I knew all that effort, no matter how small, was paying off. Because in the end, moving a little every day is much more powerful than moving a lot just once in a while. Common myths and mistakes about supplements in old age. During this whole process, I heard many repeated phrases. Some I told myself. Others came from friends, neighbors, even doctors who didn't believe much in anything not prescribed. And I understand. After a certain age, you get more cautious. You don't believe everything you hear. But sometimes that caution can also keep us away from real solutions. One of the most common myths I heard was, I'm too old for that. Does that sound familiar? We say it when we feel any change is useless, that our time to improve has passed. But that's not true. The body changes, yes, but it still responds, even at 80. I've seen people in their 90s who start moving better just with some changes in diet and activity. It's never too late. Never. The important thing is not to be like before. It's to be as good as possible now. Another myth I heard many times, I don't want to take anything weird. And believe me, I thought that too. With so many new things on the market, you don't know what's reliable and what's not. But here we're not talking about something strange. HMB is not a strange substance invented in a lab. It's something the body already produces naturally, though in small amounts. It's just about giving it a little help. Like wearing glasses when your vision isn't good. You're not changing your eyes. You're just helping them do what they've always done. They also said to me, "Eating well is enough, right?" I wish it were so. But the truth is, with age, our bodies don't absorb nutrients the same way. Even eating well, sometimes it's not enough. We need an extra boost. And besides, who eats perfectly every day? There are days when we barely eat due to lack of appetite or energy to cook. That's where supplements play their role. Complementing, not replacing. They're not magic solutions, but tools. Finally, many think, that's for young people who exercise. But no. In fact, studies show that older adults, especially those already losing muscle mass, benefit the most. The goal isn't to become strong like an athlete, but to stop the decline, avoid depending on others, stand with dignity. And you don't need to take 1,000 things. Sometimes one decision, one small change, can trigger a chain of improvements, like it did for me. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing is not taking a supplement. The most dangerous thing is staying still, believing there's nothing left to do. What I noticed after 3 months. 3 months passed since I started with HMB, proteins, and daily exercises. And although the physical aspect was the starting point, I realized the changes went far beyond my legs. Yes, my muscles responded. I no longer felt so weak or unstable. When I walked, I felt my steps firmer. When I got up, I no longer hesitated. It wasn't an enormous strength, far from it, but it was mine. Enough to feel like I was regaining control. But the most important thing wasn't just the muscles. What surprised me most was how my mood changed. I had regained something I didn't know I had lost. Hope. That little spark of getting up in the morning with a purpose. I felt lighter, more awake. I slept better at night. I didn't wake up as often. And when I did, it wasn't with that old discomfort, but with calm. Even my posture changed. I noticed it when I saw myself reflected in a supermarket window. I wasn't so hunched over. I walked a bit more upright, shoulders less drooped, as if, little by little, I was coming back to live in my body. One day I went to the doctor for a routine checkup. He was surprised to see me. He said, "Antonio, you have a different face. What are you doing differently?" I told him, step by step, without exaggeration. He listened carefully, asked for supplement details, checked my tests, and said something I will never forget. "The most important thing you've gained isn't strength, it's confidence. That, at your age, is worth more than any medicine." And he was right. My family noticed too. My daughter said I spoke with more energy, that I looked more present. My grandchildren, who used to see me just sitting at home, now asked if I wanted to go for a walk with them. And one afternoon, without telling anyone, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went out alone, walked to the neighborhood square, sat on a bench in the sun, and just watched people pass by. It wasn't a heroic act or a great feat, but for me, it was a comeback. Going out alone again, without fear, without hurry, was recovering a part of my life I thought was over. And at that moment, I understood this wasn't just about strong legs. It was about having the courage to trust yourself again, and how a small change, sustained consistently, can give you much more than you expected. I'm not going to say I got younger. I'm not 20, nor do I want to be. Nor did I get my old body back. But after this whole process, I can say something with certainty. I felt more alive than ever. It wasn't strength that changed me the most. It was the feeling of trusting my body again, of getting up without fear, of going out to walk without hesitation, of being able to look ahead without that shadow that creeps in old age. The one that whispers every step could be the last in freedom. After 70, life is no longer about running. It's about standing, being able to go to the bathroom alone, preparing your own breakfast, not always depending on someone else for things that were once simple. And above all, it's about choosing how you live the time you have left, without resigning yourself too early. This path I walked, with HMB, proteins, exercises, and above all, willpower, wasn't magical, but it was real, and that makes it valuable. If you're listening to this and feel your legs no longer respond like before, if it's hard to get up, if you're afraid to walk alone, if you've started to feel you depend more on others than you want to, don't ignore it. Listen to it. Your body can still improve. It can still support you. You just have to give it what it needs, with patience, respect, and the care given to something fragile but valuable. Because it is. And no, this isn't a product promotion. I'm not paid to say this. This is my experience. What I lived, what I felt, what changed in me. I just wanted to share it in case, like me, you also thought it was too late to improve. That decline was inevitable, that there was no choice but to get used to dependence. It's not like that. Sometimes the only thing needed is a decision. Small, silent, but firm. A signal to yourself that you haven't given up, that you're still here, standing, and eager to keep being so. Thank you for staying until the end. And if anything here resonated with you, if any phrase touched a chord inside you, listen to that feeling. Because maybe it's your body whispering softly, asking you not to abandon it yet. Take care, move, and don't give up on your legs. They can still take you farther than you think.